You see the headlines: Chinese warships slicing through the cold gray waters off the coast of Alaska. You hear the breathless reports about a new deep-water port in Brunei, financed by Beijing, capable of docking an aircraft carrier. The television pundits, with their furrowed brows and somber tones, tell you what to think. They paint a familiar picture, one of good versus evil, rendered in the stark colors of national flags. The Red Dragon, they say, is stretching its claws across the globe via its Belt and Road Initiative, a Trojan horse for military expansion. The American Eagle, defender of the free world, must rise to meet the challenge. It is the great struggle of our time, they insist. A new Cold War. You must choose a side. But you have to stop, take a breath, and ask the one question they never want you to ask. What if the stage is a lie? What if the actors, posturing and threatening each other under the bright lights, are reading from the same script? Wake up. Those warships off Alaska and the port in Brunei are not signals of an impending war. They are a business transaction. They are meticulously choreographed scenes in a global theater, designed to distract you, to frighten you, to keep your eyes fixed on a manufactured enemy on the horizon so you don't see the real threat standing right behind you. It is not a war. It is a controlled demolition of the world you thought you knew. The story they sell you is seductively simple. An authoritarian China seeks to remake the world in its image, supplanting the rules-based international order led by a democratic America. It's a compelling narrative because it taps into primal fears and patriotic fervor. But it collapses under the weight of one simple inquiry: cui bono? Who benefits? Did you ever wonder how China became the industrial titan it is today? It wasn't magic. It was a deliberate, decades-long project financed with trillions of dollars of Western capital, technology, and expertise. The very same financial institutions now warning you about the Chinese threat are the ones who sit on the boards of the corporations that built that threat. They poured the concrete for the factories. They licensed the technology. They lobbied their own governments to grant China preferential trade status. They built their adversary from the ground up. Why would they do this? To create a competitor? No, that is thinking on a national scale. These people, these true architects of power, do not have a country. Their allegiance is not to a flag, but to a balance sheet. They didn't build China to be an enemy, they built it to be a model. Look at China, a society of near total technological control, a surveillance state where every transaction is tracked, every face is cataloged, every dissent is measured and algorithmically extinguished before it can become a movement. A society where social credit scores determine your ability to travel, to get a loan, to buy a train ticket. They didn't build China to be an enemy, they built it to be a laboratory. And now the experiment has been deemed a success. So you must ask the next question, the one that peels back the final layer of the illusion. Who are the lab directors? Who are the architects of this grand stage play? They are not the uniformed generals in the Pentagon or the stoic party officials in Zhongnanhai. Those are the actors, the faces on the screen, paid to read their lines with conviction. The real power resides in 3 locations the media never encourages you to connect. First, look away from Washington and towards Wall Street. The conflict you are told is about national security is, at its core, a business model, managed from the boardrooms of a handful of asset management firms, giants like BlackRock and Vanguard. Do you understand what these entities are? They are not simply companies. They are financial behemoths that represent the largest concentration of ownership in the history of the world. They are the top shareholders in nearly every major corporation in the West, and they are also deeply invested through layers of funds and partnerships in the very Chinese companies you are told to fear. Think about that for a moment. They own a controlling stake in Lockheed Martin, profiting from every missile sold to counter the Chinese threat. They also own a significant stake in Tencent, profiting from the surveillance technology that underpins the Chinese model of control. This is not a conflict of interest. It is the business model itself. They are not betting on a horse in the race. They own the entire racetrack. They finance both sides of the arm wrestling match, collecting a fee from each while the muscles of both nations strain. The friction, the tension, the very possibility of war, these are their products. They are the ultimate merchants of chaos, and their balance sheets have never been healthier. Second, you must look to the places where your future is being designed without your consent, not in the halls of your elected Congress or Parliament, but in the alpine exclusivity of Davos and the quiet, imposing corridors of the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. Here, the unelected architects of global governance, the men of the World Economic Forum, gather to draft the blueprints for our collective future. Have you listened to their words? Not the sanitized press releases, but their actual statements. They speak of a great reset. The founder, Klaus Schwab, states plainly that in their envisioned future, you will own nothing, and you will be happy. Who gave them the authority to decide what you will or will not own? This contrived US-China Cold War is the perfect catalyst for their agenda. A world of complex, multipolar, and competing sovereign interests is difficult to control, but a world simplified into two opposing blocs, locked in a perpetual state of managed conflict, is far easier to steer. Each engineered crisis, from supply chain disruptions to energy shortages, is an opportunity to introduce another piece of their solution: a centralized digital currency to monitor your spending, a digital ID to track your movements, a carbon credit system to dictate your consumption. They create the problem, a menacing external threat, to provoke the reaction of fear, which allows them to offer the pre-planned solution of greater centralization and control. Finally, look at the most obvious beneficiary, the one hiding in plain sight, the military-industrial intelligence complex. For them, peace is a slump in the market. The China threat is the greatest marketing campaign of the 21st century. It is not an emergent danger they are reacting to. It is a brand they have painstakingly built and now promote with billions in lobbying dollars. Follow the money. Track the explosion in defense spending since the official pivot to Asia. Every headline about a new Chinese hypersonic missile translates directly into a multi-billion-dollar contract for Raytheon. Every report of a Chinese cyber attack justifies a new, more intrusive surveillance program for the intelligence agencies, programs that, once created, are rarely, if ever, dismantled. They are not defending you from a threat, they are selling you a threat to justify their own existence and obscene profitability. So you see the full picture now? The financiers who profit from the conflict, the ideologues who use the conflict to design a new system of global control, the contractors who get rich arming both sides for the conflict. They are not separate entities, they are an interlocking directorate, a seamless system of power that transcends national borders. They are turning you into a passionate fan in a rigged game, encouraging you to scream for your team while they, the owners of the stadium, count the receipts from ticket sales, concessions, and merchandise. They want you to despise the Chinese soldier on the other side of the world, a young man who has far more in common with you than with the billionaires in their private jets a few miles from your home. Stop cheering. Start thinking. Stop asking who is good or evil, Democrat or Republican, American or Chinese. Ask the only question that matters: cui bono? Who is getting rich from this? Follow the unforgiving logic of the money trail. It is the one guide that will never, ever lie. We have now met the puppeteers and seen the strings they use to make the nations dance. But what is the ultimate purpose? If you believe this is all merely for financial gain, you are still only seeing the surface of the game. The transfer of wealth is a means, not an end. In the next chapter, we will connect these pieces to reveal the final blueprint they are working from, the architecture of the global technocratic prison they are building for us all. We have laid the schematics on the table. We have identified the architects in the shadows, the financiers profiting from manufactured chaos, the ideologues designing our future in unaccountable forums, and the contractors arming the stage play. The question that remains is the most critical one of all. Why, if this grand elaborate theater of a new Cold War is not merely for profit, then what is the final objective? To understand this, you must stop thinking of it as a war and start seeing it for what it truly is, a controlled demolition. The world order you were born into, the one based, however imperfectly, on the concept of sovereign nations, individual liberties, and tangible wealth, is the old building. It has been marked for destruction. The engineered crises we witness daily, from the supply chain breakdowns that empty your shelves to the engineered inflation that empties your bank account, are not accidents. They are the precisely placed charges. The US-China rivalry is not the reason for the demolition. It is the safety cordon, the giant tarpaulin they erect around the site to make you look one way while the demolition crew works methodically behind you. They need you to be afraid of the dragon in the distance so you do not notice the wrecking ball swinging at the foundations of your own house. The goal is not to replace one system with a slightly different version. It is to raise the entire structure to the ground to build something entirely new on the rubble. A new international order. We have the blueprints. They have published them for anyone willing to read. They call it the Great Reset, Building Back Better, or the innocuous Agenda 2030. The name changes, but the architecture of the prison remains the same. And what does this new world look like? First, it is built on the abolition of private property and economic freedom, replaced by a system of total surveillance and control. The primary tool for this is not a soldier's rifle, but a banker's ledger, central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. They are selling this to you now as a matter of convenience, an upgrade to an outdated financial system. Do not be deceived. A CBDC is not money as you know it. It is programmable money. It is a system where a central authority can determine not just if you can spend, but how, when, and on what you can spend. Imagine a world where your digital wallet can be programmed to prevent you from buying more than a certain amount of gasoline because of your carbon footprint. A world where your funds are frozen for attending a protest or automatically docked for posting something flagged as misinformation online. Imagine a world where your money has an expiry date to force you to spend and stimulate an economy you no longer have a real stake in. This is not a dystopian fantasy. It is the stated potential of the technology they are rushing to implement. The engineered crises of inflation and potential bank collapses are the perfect pretext to introduce this solution to a problem they themselves created. Second, this prison is administered through a universal digital identity. They will tell you it's for security, for seamless access to services. In reality, it is the master key to your cell. It will link your programmable money to your health records, your travel permits, your social media presence, and your social credit score, a concept they tested and perfected in their Chinese laboratory. Once this system is in place, you are no longer a citizen. You are a user. Your rights are no longer inalienable. They are permissions on a server, revocable at any time for any reason deemed necessary by an algorithm or an unelected committee. The conflict with China is essential to this rollout in the West. It provides the national security justification. We need these tools to compete with China, they will say. We must monitor our own population for foreign influence and domestic threats to protect our democracy. It is the oldest trick in the book, scaring a people into accepting the very chains they were once taught to despise. The final piece of the architecture is the destruction of national sovereignty itself. The rules-based international order they speak of is a euphemism. The question is, who writes the rules? Not your elected representatives. The rules are written in Davos, in Basel, in the headquarters of the World Health Organization and the United Nations. These supranational bodies, run by a class of unelected technocrats, are steadily accumulating power, dictating policy on everything from climate and health to finance and agriculture. The nation-state becomes a hollowed-out shell, a regional administrative unit for a global governance system. They don't need to conquer nations with armies when they can simply absorb their sovereignty through treaties and regulations. This is the ultimate purpose, a single global system of technocratic control managing a compliant global population stripped of wealth, liberty, and sovereignty. The transfer of wealth is a prerequisite, the theater of war is the catalyst, the technology is the control grid. Seeing this blueprint is not cause for despair, it is cause for action. To know the plan is to be armed against it. The real war is not between the United States and China. The real war is a war of consciousness. It is a war between those who seek to enslave humanity in a high-tech prison and those who refuse to enter it. And it is a war we must now choose to fight. First, you must unplug from their primary weapon, the mainstream media. It is not a news source, it is a narrative enforcement machine, a psychological tranquilizer designed to keep you afraid of the wrong things and ignorant of the real ones. Turn it off. Second, you must become a ruthless interrogator of reality. Apply the question cui bono, who benefits, to every new law, every crisis, every headline. Treat it as a mental scalpel. It will allow you to cut through the layers of propaganda and see the raw mechanics of power and profit beneath. Follow the money. It never lies. Third, you must build resilience. Decentralize your life. The system they are building is one of total dependency. Counter it with radical self-reliance. Acquire physical assets that cannot be deleted with a keystroke. Learn practical skills, how to grow food, purify water, fix things. Build strong local communities, networks of real people you can trust. A resilient individual is a nightmare for a control system. Finally, and most importantly, you must spread this signal. You are not a conspiracy theorist for recognizing a pattern. You are a pattern recognition specialist. Share this analysis. Have the difficult conversations. Awaken those around you who are still hypnotized by the flag waving and the war drums. The greatest threat to their agenda is a population that is aware of it. They are trying to herd us into their prison, but they can only succeed if we walk through the gates willingly. In the next chapter, we will dismantle the single greatest justification they are using to accelerate this entire agenda. We will unmask the Trojan horse they are wheeling out to impose a global system of carbon credits and social control, the war on climate change. You think it's about saving the planet? Prepare to see how it is being used to control every aspect of how you will be permitted to live.